Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Awaken the World. We are live here on the Awaken the World group page. It is 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the 8th day of September in the year 2021. Understanding creation, consciousness, and the Creator. That's a whole lot of C's. Might even make you seize up. Good one. Yeah. See, it's a good thing. When there's a screen between you and me, you can't cuff me on the back of the head for my poor humor. I'm relatively safe. Although, you could use it as incentive to show up in person and do it. I mean, you got to be fast, because I'm like lightning. Now you see me, now you don't. So, what are we going to talk about tonight? Well, we're going to talk about a few different things. You know, I and before we get too deeply into, and I'm going to do this first, and then we're going to switch into the purely positive zone. But by the way, do you notice that I strangely match our house? We have every year, there's a different plague. And, one year we just had a plague of earwigs. And then the next year, you have a plague of slugs. And they were never that bad. But this year it appears that it's a plague of flies. And we have all those little tiny itty bitty flies, literally in clouds, hanging around in the backyard, and they love to stick themselves to the shirt in vast numbers. And it's really interesting to watch the shirt sort of change color as all these little flies hang out. And I don't really want to hurt them, so I carefully unbutton it and kind of shake them out, and then get the shirt back on. And yeah, they don't live very long. They spend 99.9% of their lives having sex, and then they die. All in all, doesn't seem to be too bad of an experience from one point of view. On the other point of view, not much chance that that little fly is ever going to really wake up, although it is an important part of the chain. But we're not here to talk about flies, or the plague, or the pandemic. We're here to talk about an aspect, though, that I really feel we all need to begin to portray. See, and I'm not really struggling for words so much as I'm struggling for the right words, because the right words are very important. It offers more opportunity for understanding. So let's just try to say it like this. One of the major disadvantages of the worldwide community that is waking up, their consciousness is being raised by hook or by crook, whether it's sheaving that titanium baseball bat, or through their own conscious efforts. There's a disjointedness. You know when I mentioned, if you look at humanity as the blob from that science fiction movies back in the 50s, or even earlier. I think it was the 50s, but anyway, it may have been 1938 too. This blob, if you were to look at it as a whole, the blob's moving forward. But within the blob, individuated parts appear to be moving backwards, left, right, up, and down, all over the place. Whole sections can appear that way. And this is where humanity's sort of at. So those of us who are awakening, and there is a worldwide awakening going on, it's occurring just as it must, from the narrow, smaller point of view. It's not happening fast enough, damn it. But one of the things that awakening lacks is a focused center. So, for example, Catholicism has a focus center, and that focus center is the church, Rome. And that organization allows for organization. And organization is something that the awakening spiritual crowd, if we can call it that for sake of a label, lack in some way. We can do it in small amounts, but we lack a worldwide structure. And I think that we need to begin to pay very close attention to the places within our existence where we're finding that that God of money is being put above all else in situations that are no longer and absolutely have never been acceptable. And what I'm talking about is looking after all the countries in the world who really don't have anything to do with climate change. They don't burn fossil fuels. They have almost zero, if not a negative impact on the planet and their carbon footprint. And they are the poorest countries. And the suffering that is already starting to occur there, and the answers coming out of the modern world, which is basically snubbing our nose nation by nation, whether it's in terms of vaccinations or money to help fight the onslaught that climate change is representing to their way of life, we really seem to be separating ourselves. And as I said to someone I was speaking to today, if we allow ourselves to be separated, in reality, there's no war to fight. We've already lost. Because in our separation, we will behave in that unconscious state from a state of separation. And we will believe that situation, and we will believe that separation to be real. And it has its own self-corrective measures built into nature, which are never pleasant. That being said, you are deeply loved, and all of creation is watching you. All of creation is loving you. All of creation is perfectly fine with whatever all of us are up to right now, because that's part of that whole free will thing. You see, when that creative consciousness wanted to get to know itself, it didn't want to put any limits on itself. It wouldn't have known how to limit itself since it was already, in effect, limitless. So we're going to start right there. We're going to start with some sort of definition of the Creator that perhaps we can all deal with without creating too much fuss in the head, and more importantly, not creating a concrete image. And this is where it becomes necessary to work with what you have egoically. And egoically, we're talking about the way the mind behaves. So, for example, if I say the word Jesus Christ, for a vast majority of the people who would ever see this video and live in the Western world, they're going to see a European Jesus. They're not going to see a more leaning into the Oriental and East Indian sort of look, short, scraggy hair. They're not going to see that. Vast majority of people are going to see based on what's already been programmed. And it's automatic. You say the words and the picture pops up. In order to detach ourselves from that a little bit and give ourselves the ability to get in contact at a deeper state with what the words are trying to relay. And that's one of the issues with the word. You remember that the word is always just the finger pointing at the moon. It's not actually the moon. So when we use these words in this sort of a situation, we're trying to use words that won't create a picture that we can really hold on to. And that allows an opening for a deeper state of understanding and realization to occur. So when I say the Creator, that tends to be pretty open. There's not a lot we're going to put on that in terms of imagery. So if you can imagine that which is everything. So there's no place where you are, let's say, okay? So you're the creator. There's no place in all of creation that you are not. You are everywhere. And you are all things. Because you are everywhere by default, that means you are everything. In the act of being everywhere, that means you're manifesting all of it, both the physical, the seen, the unseen, the spiritual, the mental, all of those different projections, the energetic, are simply aspects of you, that creator. Now, in this, we're going to enter into a little journey, and it's the journey of creation. I've told it one time before, quite a long time ago. And I literally received this during a ceremonial training I was undertaking while I was in Tibet. And during that time, I spent 187 days on top of a mountain in a one-man monastery. And I never saw another human being. The way it was set up, every evening I would walk my garbage and everything down and drop it off. Or I would do it in the morning, and they would come by sometime in the night. I wouldn't know when. And I would drop off my garbage and refuse, and there'd be fresh food ready for me to take back up to the monastery. But the idea was is you were totally alone, and you spent anywhere between 10 to 14, 16 hours a day in chanting practices, in deep and profound states of communication and meditation. And in that time, this story of creation was relayed to me as a way to explain the all. So it kind of leads into the creator, leads into consciousness, leads into the story of creation. So in order to understand that creator, well, consciousness is the only word that we can really think of, because energy doesn't really work, because energy is transmutable, it's changeable. But consciousness itself, as the underlying core of everything, makes perfect sense. And indeed, it is actually the truth of our existence that every single thing is conscious. Every single thing is made up of that consciousness that we would call that creator. This is what is meant by we are all children of the divine. We are not a separate entity. We are not so much as an offspring as we are an expression of that divine. So when you are everything, imagine that you are everything right now. You can't actually look into a screen and see yourself. Why? Because when you're everything, you're the screen too. And that's hard to comprehend. But only from the point of view of understanding that if you truly knew you were the mirror, then what would ever be the point of looking in a mirror, and what could it ever reveal about you? So in order to know itself, in order to find out about itself, and there's another term that find out can be replaced with, and that term in our physical sense would be to evolve, to expand. Every time we find out something about ourselves, it gives us an opportunity to enlarge ourselves in one way or another. And that can be especially true if it turns out that we find out that we like potato chips too much. We want to avoid that. The whole point being is that in order to know itself, you have to be convinced that you're not the mirror. that you're something other than the mirror, that you're something or somehow individuated in form. And only then, under that illusion, can you, as an extension, a child of, an aspect of that creator, only then, in that state of separation, can you truly come to see yourself by the perception that there is a mirror. Now that can be a little difficult to grasp, and I do understand that. But what I'm trying to do here is do it without adding any additional imagery, trying to limit the imagery and let you just absorb the words. So you can imagine that this creative consciousness, understanding that the only way to know itself would be to blow itself up, to seed a new space that we would call our three-dimensional universe, to seed a new space with itself, an eons long adventure ride, already knowing the ultimate goal, the ultimate finish line is a full return to itself, only to do so again and again and again. So this consciousness, in a state of pure joy, pure love, exploded itself out into what we would call our physical space, created the universe and everything that's in it. Now, it didn't create everything that's in it in a heartbeat. And at the same time, that which needed to be created did happen in a heartbeat. So you can imagine this initial explosion of light, this explosion of energy that previously what was literally smaller than the head of a pin, that there's nothing more that's ever been added to all of creation. How is it that all of this material has come into existence from that little tiny, infinitesimally small spot? So you can imagine this wave of consciousness rolling out into this new space, literally expanding and becoming the new space as the wave continuously crashes outwards. And in those waves, over what we would call millennia of time, eddies of consciousness begin to form. You can imagine these rivers flowing through creation, growing and growing in density, growing in awareness of its separation, of its aloneness in creation, becoming dense enough to start to manifest dust. Gravity begins to take over, a natural result of the creation of this physical space. And this dust begins a slow, lazy spin, like water running down a drain. Consciousness looking upon itself on a merry-go-round. Over time, planets themselves are formed, each one of them a conscious being. Each one aware of its separation, but having an opportunity to become aware of itself as part of the whole. Each one looking back upon creation itself, being creation itself, learning about creation. You know, the idea that we're perfect beings is both true and not true, because perfection is not a state of stillness in any way. You know, that's the one thing you must understand about life, is that it is never still. There's never an end game. There's never a finish line where you're going to get to say, well, that was fun. It's over for good. It's not going to happen. And when we understand that and we really, really take that to heart, we're being given the opportunity to see that in every moment, we are both that idea that we're separate and yet being offered the other side of that coin. To see the connection, to see the wholeness, to see the oneness, and to evolve not only ourselves towards higher and higher states of perfection, but to understand that all of creation itself is still evolving. There's no end point to creation's evolution, just as there's no end point to ours. And when we're down here on this planet, things can seem so out of touch. We have this amazing opportunity to come together as one planet, as one humanity, in the knowledge and truth that we are all part of the whole. We are all children of that divine consciousness, all children of that Creator, all worthy of the same things that we would wish for ourselves. The one thing that creation never does is worry about the outcome. And the reason that it never does is because the outcome has never been in doubt. And this does not mean we sit back and do nothing. What it means is we stride out confidently. We speak from our higher selves. We speak from the highest point of our being that we're capable of in the given moment. And we take to heart, even if we can't feel it in every moment of every day, that indeed we are love itself expressing itself throughout creation. That every single one of us communicates to each other on hallowed ground. That every meeting, every experience we have is an opportunity to commune with and evolve alongside the divine, whether resident in another or ourselves. It's all that same glorious one. So we can see in the creation of a planet, for example, the planet Earth, at its level of consciousness, just as creation itself offers itself unto itself in order to get to know itself, and that's a lot of itself, I know. The planet Earth manifests all these physical beings, the plants, the trees, the animals, the insects, all of it, and us. And we are part of the planet's evolution, just as the planet is part of the solar system's evolution, and the solar system is part of this galactic arms evolution, and so on, etc., etc. All the way back to that one whole, that one creator. It's worth remembering this. We are going to be tasked with times, and we're seeing them already, where people are reacting out of anger, and they're reacting out of fear. And for a lot of people, times are going to get tougher and tougher. The idea that we're separate, the idea that we have to maintain an illusion that somehow you and I are any different, no matter what we may think or believe, we are all children of that same universe. We need to rise from this place in every moment of our day. There is nothing to fight against. There is nothing to fear. There is just an opportunity. And I always say, and maybe it's the old soldier in me, but if you're going to die one day, and we all will, you might as well die standing for something. Not standing against something, but standing for something. Make that something a state of being that you radiate out from you in every single moment of every day. That's it, that's all. Keep it short tonight. Namaste. Understand that consciousness is everything. That's all conscious. Your cat is conscious, your dog is conscious, your plants are conscious. Even this pen holds a degree of consciousness to it. It's not going to talk to me, but it also is an expression of that same material, that same consciousness. Namaste. Have a beautiful night. Take care.